The echo of Elias's footsteps had long vanished, but the silence he left behind was deafening, suffocating. I stood there in the sterile hallway, the velvet box heavy in my hand. Inside, the brilliant diamond necklace felt cold, a cruel glittering reminder of his final command, go, and never speak of this again. He thought he could buy me off with a promotion and a piece of jewelry. He thought he could turn the profound, life-altering connection we forged, the fear, the trust, the kiss, into a simple dismissed line item on his personal expense report. Rage. That's what hit me, hotter and sharper than any fear the thugs on the balcony had ever inspired. This was a searing, intimate fury born from betrayal. He had seen the real me, and I had seen the vulnerable, protective heart beneath his billions, and now he was trying to erase it all to protect his own complicated life. I looked down at the necklace. It was flawless, expensive, and entirely meaningless. You can't do this, Elias Thorne, I whispered to the empty air, my voice trembling with controlled power. You don't get to decide my fate. You don't get to decide what I'm worth risking. I slammed the box shut, the soft click sounding like a starting pistol. I wouldn't take the flight. I wouldn't take the promotion. I was going back to the only place he couldn't control, the office. The journey back was a blur of frantic planning, fueled by airport coffee and sheer stubbornness. I arrived at Thorne & Company on Monday morning, not as the newly promoted director, but as the same slightly overcaffeinated Norahs, carrying a dangerous billion-dollar secret and a very large grudge. I marched straight past my stunned colleagues, ignoring the whispers about my sudden promotion, and headed for the executive floor. I didn't knock. I just walked straight into his office, slamming the velvet jewelry box down onto his pristine mahogany desk. He was standing by the window, already immersed in a phone call, looking every bit the cold, commanding CEO. He glanced up and his face, usually a masterpiece of practiced indifference, flashed with a mixture of shock and sheer unadulterated anger. He ended the call instantly, his gaze burning into mine. What in God's name are you doing here, Norah? His voice was a low snarl, thick with disbelief. You were supposed to be on a flight back, accepting your position. I was, I retorted, matching his intensity. I pushed the box toward him. But I don't accept rewards for compliance, Elias. I accept them for results. And my result is that I know your secret. I know your fear and I know your heart. You don't get to erase that with expensive jewelry. He slowly walked around his desk, a predator circling his prey. The temperature in the room plummeted. He loomed over the desk, his hands resting on the dark wood, leaning in until the only thing separating us was his formidable control. You chose to endanger yourself, he stated, his voice dangerously soft. You chose to defy a direct order. I gave you the out. I gave you safety. Now you've forfeited it. I chose you, I countered, standing my ground. I chose to finish what we started. You said you couldn't afford a liability, Elias. Fine. Then I'm making myself invaluable. I am not leaving until you look me in the eye and tell me that the risk isn't worth it. His eyes narrowed, studying my face with an almost painful intensity. The professional hatred was gone, replaced by a devastating conflict, the fight between his protective instincts and his overwhelming suppressed desire. He moved then, fast and unpredictable. He didn't come around the desk. Instead, he vaulted over it in one fluid, terrifying movement, pinning me against the wall near the door. The sound of his body hitting the wall next to mine was shocking. You have no idea what you're asking for, he breathed, his chest rising and falling rapidly against mine. The scent of sandalwood and pure masculine rage filled my senses. You are fire, Norah, he groaned, his voice rough with unbearable torment. And I am ice. You will consume me. Before I could respond, his mouth crushed down on mine with a brutal, demanding urgency. Just as the kiss deepened into something consuming and irreversible, the office door flew open with a sudden sharp sound. Standing there, framed in the doorway, was a tall, elegant woman, her eyes wide with shock and cold fury. Elias? What in heaven's name do you think you are doing? Is this the project manager who nearly bankrupted the company? You told me she was gone. The world stopped. Elias was still pressed against me, his lips warm and demanding, but the sound of that voice, cold, polished and accusatory, snapped him back to the CEO persona in an instant. He pulled away from me with a violence that made me gasp. Moving so fast he put the desk between himself and the elegant woman in the doorway. She was a vision of expensive control. Tailored ivory suit, diamonds glittering at her throat, and eyes the same icy gray as Elias's, but without the fire. She looked like a perfected version of Elias's corporate mask. "Clarissa," Elias stated, his voice a low, strained warning. "This is not the time, nor is this your concern." Clarissa. Even her name sounded sharp. She didn't look at me. Her cold, assessing gaze was entirely focused on Elias, sweeping down his rumpled suit and the furious disarray of his hair. She knew exactly what she had interrupted. "It is entirely my concern, Elias," Clarissa countered, her voice low and laced with generations of entitlement. "When your personal concerns drag us into a PR crisis, which this one certainly will if she opens her mouth, it becomes a family issue. Who is this?" She finally flicked her gaze toward me, her eyes lingering contemptuously on the velvet jewelry box on the desk. "The employee you promised father you'd have dismissed after the Geneva incident?" I felt a sickening drop in my stomach. Family issue. Promise father. This wasn't just a rival. This was someone deeply embedded in his life, and she knew about the true stakes of the Geneva trip. Elias's jaw was locked so tight I thought his teeth might shatter. "Clarissa, this is Norah Hayes. Miss Hayes, this is my sister Clarissa Thorne. She handles the public relations and legal defenses for the family assets." He gave the term family assets a dark, meaningful emphasis directed entirely at Clarissa. Clarissa let out a brittle, humorless laugh. "The family assets. Right. Well, it seems Miss Hayes is determined to get a piece of those assets, judging by the cheap melodrama she's presenting." She nodded toward the box. "Did she try to blackmail you, Elias?" The accusation was a fresh sting of fury. Before I could retort, Elias spoke, his voice taking on the authoritative rumble of pure, unadulterated command. "That is enough. Clarissa, leave. I will handle this. Norah, stay." Clarissa shot me a look that promised war, but she obeyed, closing the door behind her with a soft, final click. The moment we were alone, all the remaining tension in Elias seemed to drain away, leaving him looking exhausted and vulnerable again. He ran a hand over his face. "You see, Norah?" he asked, his voice rough. "This is my world. Clarissa knows about the family wealth. She knows about the targets. She is hypervigilant. You bring danger and complications, and she sees you only as a threat to the stability I have spent my life building." He walked back to the window, his gaze distant. "The kiss was stupid. Reckless. I am sorry. It changes nothing. You must understand, Norah, I did not just promote you to get rid of you. I promoted you because I need you safe, and the only way I can rationalize that is if I know you are financially secure and physically distant. I truly meant for you to take that out." He looked back at me, his eyes pleading. "It changes everything for me. The truth is, I can't look at you without wanting to lose the control that keeps me alive. So please, take the promotion. Take the damn necklace. Go home. You won." He was confessing his desire but simultaneously denying its reality, convinced his protection was the only way to love me. My resolve hardened. He wasn't apologizing for the kiss. He was apologizing for caring. "No, Elias," I said, picking up the jewelry box and tossing it back onto the desk, where it slid to a stop directly in front of him. "I didn't win. I haven't even started. I will take the promotion, but I'm not leaving the executive floor. I'm taking the office next to yours. I'm going to prove to you that the risk of me being here is worth the reward of us being together. And if your sister is looking for a threat to your stability, she just found one." I took the new director office, the one exactly 10 feet away from Elias's, as my war room. The promotion gave me the authority I needed. The proximity gave me the weapon. If he wanted distance, he would get constant, calculated torment. My first act was replacing the minimalist, charcoal art in my new office with vibrant, chaotic canvases, splashes of color that screamed disruption in his muted executive world. My second act was ensuring the aroma of my excessively fruity herbal tea constantly permeated the air vent shared between our two pristine offices. It was petty. It was perfect. But the real torment was professional. I was brilliant at my job, And now I had the authority to push projects that challenged his ruthless efficiency. Every day was a new subtle power play. One afternoon, I was reviewing the Q3 reports when he called me into his office. I didn't knock, of course. He was standing behind his desk tying his tie, a purely domestic, utterly mesmerizing sight. He looked tense, exhausted, and perfectly lethal. "Hayes," he began, his voice strained. "The projection for the North Valley merger is off by 5 points. I need you to reconcile the variance immediately." "I saw it, Thorne," I replied, crossing my arms. I used his last name like a challenge now. "The variance is due to the charity clause I inserted, ensuring the local staff retain their benefits. It's an investment in long-term morale, which is why it's categorized under human capital appreciation, not loss." He dropped his hands, a muscle ticking in his jaw. "You didn't run that clause past me." "I'm director now," I reminded him sweetly. "I run my projects. Unless you want to spend the next 4 hours arguing semantics, the clause stands. It saves us 5 points of bad press, which is worth far more than the capital investment." He stared at me, his intense gaze trying to bore holes into my composure. He hated that I was right. He hated that I was challenging his authority in his own domain. But most of all, he hated that my defiance felt thrilling. "You're reckless, Norah," he finally growled, his voice dipping low. "I learned from the best," I shot back, a slow smile spreading across my face. "You taught me that if you want something, you take it. And I want you, Elias. All of you." The air instantly became heavy, electric. He took a single deliberate step toward me. "Don't tempt me, Norah. You have no idea how tenuous my control is right now. Clarissa is watching your every move. She suspects something is deeply wrong, and she will find a way to discredit you if you give her an inch." Just as the tension reached a breaking point, just as his control was about to snap and I knew he was going to cross that line, my phone rang. It was an unrecognized number. I answered, pulling my eyes away from his. "Norah Hayes." The voice on the other end was cold, male, and heavily disguised. "Miss Hayes, you have chosen to ignore the warning given to Mr. Thorne in Geneva. The protection he offered was generous. By staying, you have become a loose end. We advise you to leave the country immediately, or your human capital appreciation projects will become a liability." The line went dead. My blood turned to ice. They weren't just watching Elias. They were watching me, watching my projects. The threat was real and it was personal. Elias, who had heard the frantic edge in my voice, was instantly beside me. What was that? Who was it? I swallowed hard, trying to regain my composure. "They know about the projects. They called them human capital appreciation liability." His face went pale, the last vestiges of the CO fading, replaced by the terrified protector. He grabbed my shoulders, his fingers digging in. "You are leaving, Norah. Right now. I will charter a flight. I will send you to a private island." "No," I shouted, pulling free. "Running didn't work last time. It only bought us 48 hours of false safety. We fight, Elias. We fight together." Before we could argue further, Clarissa swept back into the office, a venomous smile plastered on her face. She held up her phone. "Elias, darling, you might want to see this. It seems your precious Norah's recklessness extends beyond her budget clauses. A certain financial magazine just received an anonymous tip with photos linking Norah Hayes and you to the Hotel Bovage in Geneva, the one father owns. And the headline suggestion? Thorne and Company CEO caught in billion-dollar love nest scandal. They are giving us 1 hour to comment, or the story runs." The silence that followed Clarissa's announcement was so profound it felt like the entire executive floor had stopped breathing. The headline echoed in the polished quiet. Billion-dollar love nest scandal. The photos, the tip, the timing, it was masterful. Clarissa hadn't just found a way to hurt me. She had found the perfect weapon to force Elias's hand. If he denied the relationship, he saved the family's secret. But I would be thrown to the wolves, my career destroyed, labeled a scorned, opportunistic employee. If he confirmed the relationship, the scandal would be enormous, exposing the sheer scale of the Thorne family's private assets and making him, and me, a bigger target than ever before. "You did this," Elias snarled, not at Clarissa but at me. The accusation was raw, fueled by the sheer terror of exposure. "Your recklessness, your defiance. I told you what would happen if you stayed. Now look what you've done to the family's stability. I did this. I fired back, though my voice wavered slightly. I risked my life for your project. I took the fall for your secret. And your solution was to pay me off and send me away. Clarissa did this because you couldn't be honest about what we are. Clarissa watched the exchange with a cold, triumphant smile. The clock is ticking, Elias, she reminded him, enjoying the display of his unraveling control. 1 hour. I can draft a complete denial. We deny the relationship. We state Miss Hayes was dismissed for inappropriate conduct immediately following the Geneva trip, and we keep father's assets secure. It's the only logical choice. I looked at Elias. His face was a mask of internal agony. His eyes darted from me to Clarissa, weighing the safety of his family legacy against the safety of my entire future. I knew what the logical choice was for a Thorne. You're right, Clarissa, he finally said, his voice low and heavy, sending a spike of crushing despair through my chest. It is the only logical choice. My heart plummeted. I stepped back, wrapping my arms around myself, feeling the sting of the betrayal more than any physical threat. I prepared myself for the final devastating blow, the moment he would publicly choose his empire over me. But, Elias continued, his head snapping up, his gray eyes now blazing with a terrifying conviction, I am no longer operating on logic. He stared at Clarissa, his command ringing through the room. Clarissa, draft a statement, but you will not deny the relationship. You will confirm that Miss Hayes and I are, in fact, engaged. You will state that the trip was a private excursion, and the Harmony Initiative was a joint charitable effort that we will now personally co-chair. Clarissa's jaw dropped. The venomous triumph instantly melted into shock. Elias, have you lost your mind? That's not a scandal, that's a declaration of war on our entire structure. Father will. I don't care what father will do, Elias cut her off, his voice a low, dangerous rumble that commanded absolute obedience. I am the CEO. I make the decisions. And my decision is that Miss Hayes is not leaving my side. Not now and not ever. Go. Do it now. Clarissa, stunned and defeated, slowly backed out of the office, closing the door behind her without a word. We were alone. The ticking clock music in the background seemed to explode into silence. I stared at him, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me. Engaged. I whispered. Elias. You just exposed everything. You risked the entire secret for me. He walked slowly toward me, his movements heavy and deliberate. He stopped right in front of me, his hands reaching out to cradle my face, his thumbs gently wiping away the silent tears I hadn't realized were falling. I tried, Norah, he confessed, his voice ragged with emotion. I tried to sacrifice my heart to protect you. And in doing so, I realized that I was only destroying myself. You were right. Running didn't work. Keeping you distant was the biggest risk of all. He leaned his forehead against mine, his breath mingling with mine. The only choice I have is to keep you where I can see you, where I can touch you, where I can defend you. He pulled back just enough to look me in the eyes, the protective intensity in his gaze now mingled with overwhelming love and relief. I may be a secret billionaire, Norah, but I am not stupid enough to let the fire that lights up my life walk away. I choose the risk. I choose you. He reached into his pocket, pulling out the velvet box containing the diamond necklace. This time he didn't just toss it. He opened it, revealing the glittering stone, and with a tender, agonizing slowness, he reached for my hand. You didn't take the promotion or the diamond as a payment, Norah, he murmured, his gaze holding mine captive. You threw it back because you wanted the truth. And the truth is, I love you. I love your chaos, your defiance, and the reckless way you fight for what you believe in. The engagement is for the press right now, but I want it to be real. He lifted the necklace. I want you to wear this not as a payment but as a promise. The threat is still out there and now we face it together. Will you put on this promise and stand by my side, knowing that every moment of our love will be a battle? The world outside the glass walls of Elias's office was about to shatter, but in that moment, standing inches from him, all I heard was the fierce, desperate pounding of my own heart. He was giving me everything. The truth, the love, and the terrifying chance to fight the danger by his side. He wasn't asking me to be safe, he was asking me to be his partner. I reached out and placed my hand over the one still holding the velvet box. The rose gold band and the magnificent diamond felt instantly warm under my touch. Yes, Elias. I breathed, my voice thick with emotion. Yes. I will stand by your side. I will wear your promise. And I will fight every single battle with you. The relief that washed over his face was so profound it made him look younger, softer, and utterly magnificent. He gently took the necklace from the box. He turned me around, his body close to mine, and with trembling, careful hands, he fastened the cold, brilliant diamond around my neck. When he finished, his hands lingered on my shoulders, and he lowered his head, pressing a lingering kiss to the bare skin just below the chain. That single gesture, possessive, tender, and deeply personal, felt like a contract sealed in my soul. Now the enemy, he murmured, his breath warm on my neck, instantly shifting from lover to commander. Clarissa has alerted the press. The anonymous sources that called you are watching. We have to move. We spent the next hour working as a seamless, unstoppable unit. While Clarissa reluctantly released the statement confirming our engagement, Elias used his own secret network to trace the phone number that had called me. It led to a shell company, a professional third party hired by his competitors to exploit his weakness. The core weakness was always the secret, but now the secret was partially out. They wanted leverage, Elias explained, watching the news alerts on his screen, which were exploding with the engagement scandal. They wanted to force my hand in a hostile takeover. But by announcing this, by publicly confirming that Norah is now inextricably linked to the Thorne name, I've made her their public shield, not their private target. It was a dangerous, high-stakes move, but it was our move. We faced the fallout together. Later that evening, long after the press conference had ended and the chaos had subsided into a dull roar of speculation, we were back in the executive suite in Geneva. Elias had insisted we leave the country again, but this time together as a unified front. The suite felt different now. It was no longer a cage of tension. It was a sanctuary. We were standing on the balcony, the crisp night air silent around us. I looked out at the glittering city lights, the same city where he had almost sent me away forever. The danger isn't over, Norah, Elias said quietly, stepping behind me and wrapping his strong arms around my waist, resting his chin on my shoulder. But I have my partner. I have my heart. I can handle anything. I leaned back into his solid warmth, lifting my hand to touch the brilliant, cold diamond on my throat, the promise. You are not ice, Elias, I whispered, finally able to verbalize the realization I'd had on the bridge. You are not cold. You are fire just like me. You just keep your fire contained to protect everything you love. He turned me in his arms, his gaze soft, profound, and overwhelmingly loving. He lowered his head, and this time the kiss was not desperate, not demanding, but absolute. It was a kiss of commitment, of surrender, of two worlds finally flawlessly merging. The enemy was gone. The boss was gone. There was only Elias, my equal, my love, my partner. He pulled back slightly, his eyes holding mine, a faint, genuine smile finally reaching his lips. I love you, Norah Hayes. You are my chaos and you are my peace. We had won the project, we had won the battle against the enemies, and most importantly, we had won each other. The billionaire was no longer a secret, and the enemy had become my forever. And that, my dear listeners, is how I won the heart of my secret billionaire. The risk was enormous, the chaos was terrifying, but the reward was worth every single moment of the fight. Thank you so much for joining me on this intense two-part journey. I truly hope you loved seeing Norah and Elias finally find their happy ending. If you loved this story, please show your support by subscribing to Norah's chapter. We have so many more passionate, high-stakes romance stories coming your way. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Until next time, remember, sometimes the greatest love story is the one you have to fight for.